Hello and welcome back. So our next piece of philosophical short fiction is from a professional philosopher, and so he's written many books and published many journal articles. But this piece is a nice little sort of fictional story that brings up some issues connected with personal identity over time. What makes me me over time? So he cooks up a fun little sci-fi story that illustrates some of these questions. So he supposes that himself, Daniel Dennett, is sent on a secret mission to an underground radioactive site that the US government has deep under the surface of the Earth. And he's supposed to go there to help, uh, whatever, just help prevent the radioactivity from leaking or some such thing, right? So getting that close to radioactivity can cause severe brain damage. So what the U.S. government plans is for him to actually leave his brain behind and just send his body to deal with the radioactive stuff, right? So what they do, the way they do that is they remove his brain, right, from his head, put it in a vat that keeps it alive, right, full of nutrients and stuff, and then they connect electrodes to his brain and send little Wi-Fi signals to his body. So, when his body's down there, so his eyes will be down underground, and when light hits his eyes, it goes through all the normal pathways until it hits, a certain neuron that would have connected to the brain, and instead there's a little sensor that picks up the signals and then sends it via Wi-Fi to that machine next to his brain in the vat, and the machine picks up the Wi-Fi signal and completes it. So it's as if his brain was connected to his eyes. They've just cut certain connections and connected them again with Wi-Fi so that they basically lengthened the nerves, right? Um, okay, and he's going to go through a series of questions, discussion of what this might look like, what the scenario might look like, and the question he wants to ask and see if we can answer is, where is Dennett in all this, right? So far we've disconnected his brain from his body, and we might ask, where is Dennett? Is Dennett in the vat, right, where his brain is, or is Dennett underground where his body is? So he says, well, here's some ways that we use I, and does one or more of them seem more appropriate? Again, part of what we're doing here is just an investigation of the human language, of our concept of the self, right? We're trying to uh, figure out be more precise about what our concept of the self is. So we say things like, well, here I am sitting on a folding chair, staring through a piece of plate glass at my own brain, right? So this is before he's been sent on the mission. They've just removed his brain, set up the Wi-Fi connections, but his body hasn't been sent underground yet. So he's standing there in the lab looking at his own brain, right? Does that sentence make sense? Here I am. That seems to say that he is his body, right? I am my body looking at my brain. But you might equally say, here I am suspended in a bubbling fluid being stared at by my own eyes, right? If you say that he's where the brain is. Um, the second one kind of sounds weird, right? So our first instinct may be that you would connect yourself with your body, I guess, right? Um, but another complication is he says, here I am. Um, well, where is here, right? So you could say the sun is shining over there. Here and there are interesting terms, or what we call indexicals, meaning that wherever you are is here, right? So when I say here, I mean in my home. When you say here, you mean wherever you are at the moment. So that word can mean lots of different locations depending on who's saying it and where they're saying it, right? Um, so if we say, oh, the sun is shining over there, well, we can all kind of agree on that, right? But here is sort of a strange one. If I say here in the vat, seems a little weird um, because that's not his experience, right? His experience is of him sitting in a chair looking at a brain, right? So if I say I'm here in the vat. So lots of these indexical terms like here and arguably I become really odd in this setup where your brain and your body are separated. Okay, so that's going to confuse things if he keeps talking about here and I and stuff like that. So in order to keep things straight, he's going to name his body and he's going to name the brain in the vat. and we're going to try to figure out. So he calls his body Hamlet, right? This is from the Shakespeare play Hamlet. And he calls the brain in the vat Yorick, which is another character in that play. So the question is, who is Dennett? Where am I? When I say I, am I talking about Hamlet or am I talking about Yorick? Right? That's the question we want to answer for Dennett. So again, Hamlet is the body, Yorick is the brain. Right? So maybe Dennett is his body. Maybe Dennett is Hamlet. Right? Uh, that seemed like the most intuitive, right? Of those two sentences, here I am, right, staring at my brain in a vat, that felt a little more natural than here I am staring at my eyes looking at me, right? Imagining that he is the brain. So maybe Dennett is his body, right? Maybe it's that simple. Well, here's the problem with that. We can imagine a different scenario that involves swapping out people's brains. Suppose that Tom and Dick switch their brains, right? Uh, you know, so we take Tom's brain and put it in Dick's body. We took Dick's brain, put it in Tom's body. So now you talk to Dick's body, and he says stuff like, "Hi, my name's Tom." He remembers everything that Tom did. He has the same tastes and appetites as Tom. And likewise, now if you talk to Tom's body, he says, "Hi, I'm Dick. Yeah, I remember uh, all the stuff that Dick remembers, and so on." Typically, right, our intuitions are, or if you've ever seen a Freaky Friday movie, where the mom and the daughter switch bodies or whatever, we typically say that the person follows the mind, right? Whatever the memories are and all the beliefs, that's where the person is. Well, and that's the brain. That's where the brain goes, right? So again, if you talk to Dick's body, he says, "Hi, I'm Tom. Yeah, I can tell you all the stuff about Tom. I remember everything Tom ever did." Well, you must be talking to Tom, right? At least that's where our intuitions are. Again, you'd rather be the brain donor than the brain recipient, right? Because you want to keep your own thoughts and your own memories, and that goes with your brain. So it's not clear that he is his body, right? A lot of our intuitions push towards, no, I am my brain. I go wherever my brain goes. So maybe that first sentence where here I am staring at my brain, even though it felt intuitively better. Maybe that's actually wrong, and maybe Dennett is where Yorick is. Maybe Dennett is his brain, right? Um, but here's an interesting question, right? Suppose Dennett commits a crime and we want to imprison him. Uh, which part would we imprison? Would we imprison his brain and leave his body free? Again, if the idea is he is his brain and we want to imprison him, then we would lock his brain up. But then his brain would just be controlling his body, and as far as he could see, he would just be as free as ever, right? Running around, experiencing things, sending signals back to his brain sending signals back to him. So when it comes to punishment, it doesn't seem like we want to punish the brain. We would want rather punish the body, right? Put his body in prison, and then he would, suffer the punishment. So uh, seems tricky, right? Some situations seems like we want to say he's the brain. Other situations we want to say he's the body. Um, maybe we say, look, I am who I say I am, right? And so it's up to Dennett, right? But are we really infallible about where we are, right? Have you ever been lost before? Well, sure, I've been lost, right? I don't know where I am on the map, right? Um, but truly, I must know that wherever I am, I'm here, right? But given this tricky brain situation, is that even the case, right? Am I always infallible about knowing that I'm here? So he wants to sort of dig into this question a little bit, right? So it seems like, sure, I can be lost on the map. I don't really know where my car is or where I am in the parking lot or something like that. But it seems like when I say I am here, that's always true no matter what, right? I can't be mistaken that I am here, right? But Dennett wants to actually question that, right? So he says, imagine this. Suppose you're playing some virtual reality, like video game or something, and you get so immersed in it, right? You're so wrapped up in the game that you actually forget that it's virtual reality, right? And so you say, "Oh, here I am, right, shooting my enemies in Germany in World War II or something, right? Um, Well, you're wrong, right? You're not actually in Germany in World War II. You're mistaken when you say here, because when you say here, there, you mean Germany in World War II, right? Where you actually are is in your living room with a headset covering your eyes. It seems like you've had like an illusory shift in point of view, right? If you get really absorbed in like maybe a movie and definitely in virtual reality, I mean, that's the whole point of it, is that you sort of forget where you are and you think you're somewhere else, right? So maybe you can be mistaken about here I am, because again, in the video game, what you mean by here is, when you're really wrapped up in it, here in the game, right? And you're not there. Um, so is that like an illusory shift of perspective, right? Are you wrong about where you are? Um, suppose you're like flying a virtual reality drone, right? And allows for very precise and accurate manipulation of physical objects. So, I don't know, you're using a drone to whatever, build a building or something, put something together, and you're totally absorbed in it, and you're even able to manipulate what's going on in that other location, right? Um, Maybe it makes sense to say, I'm here at the construction site, even though your body isn't there, but you're manipulating things, right, with the drone, your visual experiences over where the drone is. So maybe that's not an illusory shift of point of view. Maybe that's a real shift, and maybe um, you are there in some sense, right? Maybe point of view is flexible in that way. You could shift it back and forth, right? Now I'm here where the drone is, right, doing my work. Now I'm back here in the headset, right, so it's kind of like a Necker cube. You ever seen a Necker cube? It's here. I think you can see it in the lecture slides. My head is covering it right now. But if you look at it, it's the exact same drawing, right? But you can get yourself to see it as a cube sort of facing one way and then as a cube facing the other way. Maybe you've seen those before. Those little blue lines are supposed to help you shift your perspective looking at it. So maybe here could be like a Necker cube. It depends on your perspective, and they could both be true, right? Depending on where your experience is located versus where your body is located. And maybe that's how we understand what's going on with Dennett, right? Maybe he's in a sense both underground and in a vat at the same time, and either one is legitimate, and it's just a shift of perspective. So maybe, right? But now he twists things even further, right? So imagine this happens. Well, first of all, um, here's some of the technical details, right, of what would be going on once Hamlet leaves the room where his brain is and starts to head underground, right? There's definitely going to be some lag, right, due to the delay in the Wi-Fi signal between New York and Hamlet. So, he thinks I want to move my arm, and might take him a slightly longer to move his arm than it would normally when his brain was in his head. Um, Other interesting things, he can drink all the booze he wants and it won't get him drunk because it won't go to his brain, right? Because Wi-Fi doesn't transmit alcohol. Also, if he gets a headache, taking aspirin is not going to help either, right? If they want to get him drunk, they have to pour booze into the vat, right? And if they want to help his headache, they'd have to somehow dissolve aspirin into the vat, right? So those are just some of the interesting technical things that happen once he starts to leave his brain and move underground. So we asked ourselves, well, maybe, I am here as just sort of a Necker cube perspective switch, and maybe it's true that he's both, right? He is in the vat and he is underground, so maybe he's in two places at once. Well, it's not totally satisfying, right? Um, because there still is a question that hasn't really been answered. Um, we're not asking where are my various parts, right? That question is easy to answer. His body is underground, his brain is in the vat, right? And we're also not just asking where is my current point of view, right? Is it again where the VR headset sort of tells me I am, or is it where my body is? Um, we want to know where I am, right? And that's a separate question from where are my parts and what is my current point of view. We want to say where is Dennett, right? It seems like to violate logic to say I am in two places at once, right? An object can only be in one place at once. So which one is Dennett is the question. So let's imagine things get a little even crazier, right? So Dennett goes into the radioactive hole, and all of a sudden he notices he gradually starts to lose his senses, right? Like his hearing goes away, then he becomes unable to speak, then his vision uh, goes away, and it seems like, oh no, what's going on? I'm losing contact, right, with the brain. Somehow the Wi-Fi has gone out, and now I'm just buried. My body is just locked underground, um, in Oklahoma, where the radioactive site is. And then all of a sudden, bam! All of a sudden, he awakes in Houston, right? And his body is gone, but his brain is still in the vat, and he's still able to think, right? So now what he is he's thinking in Houston, right? Um, at this point, right, where you have no contact with your body at all, it's going to be hard to think of yourself as your body, right? He has definitely shifted instantaneously to thinking of himself as located in Houston, right, where the brain is. Um, Now, this is interesting. The fact that, right, your mind, where you are, can move 1,000 miles instantaneously, faster than the speed of light, uh, seems to maybe be a proof that the mind is not a material object, right? Because material objects can't travel faster than the speed of light. Um, so that's an interesting sort of side note, right? Okay, so his body is trapped underground, right? They lost contact with it. They can't receive it. They can't retrieve it, right? That's okay. It seems like Dennett isn't gone, right? Because his brain is still in the vat in Houston, and he seems to have just sort of instantaneously shifted his perspective, and now he's just a brain without a body, right, in Houston. So they give him a new body, right? They build a new body, call that body Fortinbras, which is another Shakespeare character in Hamlet, right? So they build this new body, connect it up to his original brain, right? Um, Now we would say, who is Dennett? Well, yeah, Dennett is the brain, probably. I guess we would resist the idea that that Dennett is the new body, right? Is now Fortinbras. Um, uh, but now suppose that Fortinbras visits Yorick, right? So he goes to see the brain, and then he flicks the on-off switch, and Dennis like, no, don't flick that switch, right? You'll turn me off, right? You'll disconnect me from the body. I won't be able to see anymore. But that doesn't happen actually, right? It's not like it was when he lost contact with his body in the underground. He feels exactly the same, right? Well, what just happened? Well, it turned out, unbeknownst to Dennett, that the scientist had completely duplicated his brain, right, and uploaded it to a computer. And so what Yorick just did when he flicked the switch was flick the brain, sorry, not Yorick, what Fortinbras did when he flicked the switch was switch the signals coming to him from Yorick to Hubert, the computer version of Dennett's brain. Now, from Dennett's experience, nothing changed, right? Because Hubert is identical to Yorick. Um, but now there's nothing left of the original Dennett in this situation. You've got a copy of his brain that's uploaded to a computer connected to a copy of his body. Um, and the original Dennett material, flesh and meat, is totally gone. But from Dennett's perspective, nothing really changed, right? He still has the same memories. He still controls the same body and still can have the same sorts of experiences, right? And it turns out he can flick the switch back and forth in between, and he doesn't notice any difference, right? Um, so now, where is Dennett, right? Things have gotten out of control. It becomes really hard to even locate um, Dennett at all, right? And what if, to make things even crazier, so now we've got, right, two Dennett minds, one being the original brain, one being the copy in the computer. Let's suppose, and we've got Fortinbras the body. Let's suppose we make a new body and hook that up to the original Yorick, right? So Fortinbras is hooked up to Hubert. The new body is hooked up to Yorick. Now which one is Dennett? The original brain with the new body, or the copy of the original brain with another new body, right? Um, So Hubert has been, right, the brain that's been controlling uh, Dennett for a while. So Dennett decided to stick with Hubert, right, and keep Yorick just as a original backup, as like a hard copy. Um, but he's been living for the last few years as Hubert controlling Fortinbras. Um, and so since Yorick isn't really being used, they make a new body, and now Yorick controls the new body. And the question is, which one is Dennett? Uh, Either one could be Dennett, right? If Hubert shut down, we'd happily say Yorick is Hubert because it was his original body. If Yorick, if the vat was spilled or broken and the brain died, well, it's okay. Hubert and Fortinbras are now Dennett, right? They have been for the last few years. Nothing serious has changed. But now we've got Dennett times two, right? And how could you have the same person twice, right? One of them has to be him, right? The answer can't be both. Um, or even worse, right? Yorick or Hubert might become permanently disembodied, right? And so the last thing he does in the story is Dennett flips the switch only to realize that the brain to which he switched somehow lost the connection and started to drift from the other brain. Kind of starts to feel like the brain is possessed right after the switch. Uh, it doesn't feel like it's in control, and it's just an observer of the body, right? Um, and he doesn't know which one is drifting. He has lost track of who he is at this point. So I think this story is fun. It doesn't obviously answer any questions or give any solid theories of personal identity over time. We'll discuss that later in the class. But here I just want to, again, get you start thinking philosophically, start thinking about these issues. Yeah. Um, what am I? Am I my brain? Am I my body? My brain could, in theory, be replaced by a computer. Then am I still my brain, right? Um, Certainly, if my body was gone, but they managed to save my brain and I could still think and remember, that would still be me. So it's a difficult question, and Dennett is really just pointing out all the difficulties, right? But we'll revisit this later in the course and see if we can get some answers to these questions about personal identity. So I'll see you in a bit.